It's something that touches everyone. Sooner or later, we all face it. And honestly, that feeling can be just utterly overwhelming.
Absolutely. That flood of thoughts, feelings, sensations, it can really feel like the ground just vanished beneath your feet.
Yeah, completely destabilizing.
And it's not just, in your head or your heart, is it?
Yeah.
I think the Tom Lavin transcript mentioned this too. It hits your ability to function. Things like concentration, focus, even just your stamina day to day.
Oh, definitely. Productivity tanks. It's this deep physical and mental drain.
And the reactions right at the start, they can be all over the place.
Right. You see confusion, sometimes this deep dive into depression, anxiety, loads of fear.
Or even like an emotional paralysis almost.
Totally. That too. And guilt, anger, it's such an intense mix. The spiritual and psychological guide we looked at touched on this spectrum too.
And, for some people, that raw feeling gets even heavier because of
Yeah.
complicated grief.
Complicated grief, what exactly is that?
It's when maybe past losses that weren't fully dealt with kind of pile onto the current one. All that unresolved history just makes the present pain feel immense, almost unbearable.
Wow, that sounds incredibly tough. I think that Tom Lavin transcript also flagged that this can be a really vulnerable time, like an edgy time, he called it.
Yes, exactly. For someone maybe with a history of substance use or other mental health challenges, the sheer stress of grief can really push those old coping mechanisms, potentially leading to relapse. It's a high-risk period.
That makes sense. The pressure is immense.
And it goes beyond the personal, too. Loss can shake your whole understanding of the world, can't it? It forces you to ask these huge questions about life's meaning.
Like, why? Why did this happen? Why them? Why now?
Right. It can trigger a real spiritual crisis for some people, a deep questioning of everything you thought you knew.
It's profound. And it's not just philosophical, is it? We saw in the Grief and PGD Stat Pearls material, there are actual physical effects.
Yeah, that link between intense grief and heart problems like Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
Broken heart syndrome, it's actually a real thing.
It really underscores how deeply connected our minds and bodies are, especially when we're navigating something as fundamental as loss.
So, okay, we've touched on that raw, immediate impact, how it just permeates everything. But the big question so many people grapple with is, why is it so damn hard? Why can't you just, get over it?
Yeah, the get over it problem. That's a key point, and something like the Psychology Today article from Lost to Love really digs into. Part of it is just the nature of loss itself.
How so?
Well, when someone you love dies,
Mhm.
that's permanent. It's not like a scrape that heals and fades. It fundamentally changes the landscape of your life. That absence, it stays with you. It travels with you.
And then there's us, our human wiring.
Exactly. Our tendency towards avoidance.
It's
It's natural, right? To try not to think about painful things.
Distraction, pushing it down.
Yeah, hiding the wound, maybe even from ourselves. Different perspectives highlighted this, like the daily Stoic stuff. Psychology Today, again, even principles in Morita therapy. Sometimes the effort to control or erase the feeling. That becomes a huge part of the struggle itself.
Trying to not feel just adds another layer of suffering.
Precisely. And yet, and this might sound a bit backward at first, some viewpoints like Stephen C. Hayes talks about this in Love and Loss. They suggest that willingness to feel pain is actually tied to our ability to connect deeply.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Willingness to feel pain.
The idea is basically that love and loss, they're not separate items on a menu you can pick from. They're kind of one package deal. So if you build these huge walls around yourself, trying desperately never to get hurt, never to feel the pain of potential loss, you also inevitably limit how deeply you can love and connect in the first place.
So the depth of the grief is sort of a testament to the depth of the love.
In a way, yes. It reframes the pain. It's not a malfunction to be fixed, but a natural, albeit incredibly painful consequence of having loved deeply.
But that's often not the message we get from the world around us.
No, definitely not. There's often this subtle, or not so subtle, cultural pressure suggesting grief should be neat and tidy. And quick.
Like that example about the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual. For a while, it had this incredibly short window, like 2 weeks for bereavement.
Exactly, 2 weeks. It just shows how out of sync that kind of societal expectation can be with the lived reality of grief. Thankfully, that's been updated, but the underlying attitude often lingers.
It really highlights the disconnect.
And it ties into something mentioned in the Buddhist perspective we looked at. Sometimes grief doesn't resolve because it just hasn't been given enough space, enough attention.
Because life gets in the way.
Yeah, especially maybe in Western cultures. The immediate aftermath of a death could be consumed by logistics, the funeral, the paperwork, all the busyness. The deep emotional work gets pushed aside, and then people feel stuck later on wondering why they're not over it.
Okay, so let's pull this together. Grief is hard, it hits everything. Our instinct is to avoid, but that often backfires, and society doesn't always help. Given all that, how do people navigate this? What actually helps?
Well, what's really striking when you look across all these different viewpoints is
Yeah.
there's no single right way. There's no one-size-fits-all manual.
More like a whole toolbox.
Exactly. Different traditions, philosophies, therapies, personal practices,
Mhm.
they all offer valuable insights and tools. It's more like a rich tapestry.
Okay, so let's explore some of those threads. How about starting way back? Ancient wisdom? The Stoics, for example.
The Stoics were pretty remarkable in how they faced difficult emotions. They talk about events happening, just the raw facts, the initial impressions. They call them fantasiae.
Okay.
And these fantasiae naturally trigger emotional reactions.
Mhm.
But the Stoic practice wasn't about not feeling. It was about examining those automatic reactions, questioning the judgments attached to them, and choosing a more, well, rational and virtuous response, learning to kind of transcend the unhelpful knee-jerk reaction.
So not suppressing the feeling, but changing your relationship to it, understanding it differently.
Precisely. They were big on facing things head-on, processing it, dealing with it immediately, not running away or burying it. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, actually wrote to his own mother when she was grieving.
What did he say?
He basically urged her not to hide her wounds. He argued that really confronting the sorrow, fully feeling it, was part of the path to finding peace eventually, not avoiding it.
That takes courage. Did they have practical techniques?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And some sound surprisingly modern. Journaling was huge for them.
Right, writing things down.
Yeah, it helps you process all that internal chaos, make sense of the swirling thoughts and feelings. They also really emphasize seeking support.
Asking for help.
Yes, no shame in it. They compared it to a soldier needing help on the battlefield. If you're struggling, reach out. Their motto, Sustain et Abscon, kind of captures it. Bear what you must endure, and refrain from impulsive, unhelpful actions driven by distress.
Bear and forbear. And what about that really powerful idea? Amor fati.
Ah, yes, love of fate. It's about radical acceptance, truly wishing for things to happen as they do happen, not as you wish they would happen.
That sounds incredibly difficult in the face of loss.
It is. It's probably one of the most challenging Stoic practices. But for them, accepting the reality of the loss, as painful as it is, was fundamental to finding any kind of inner peace, not fighting reality.
Okay, shifting forward quite a bit now. Modern therapeutic approaches. We saw a distinction made with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right. While traditional CBT, with its focus on directly challenging and changing negative thoughts, might sometimes feel a bit invalidating, maybe, for the deep pain of grief.
Like trying to argue yourself out of feeling sad.
Sort of. But it's important to note that grief-focused CBT does show effectiveness, especially for what's called prolonged grief disorder. It uses specific techniques like carefully managed exposure to reminders of the loss, restructuring really difficult grief-related thoughts, and helping people gradually re-engage with life behavioral activation.
So a tailored approach. And then there's ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. You pronounce it ACT, right?
Yes, ACT. It's a mindfulness-based therapy, and it offers a somewhat different angle. It's less about directly changing the content of your thoughts and more about changing your relationship to them.
Okay, how does ACT apply to grief specifically?
Well, a core principle in ACT when dealing with grief is acceptance. And that doesn't mean liking the pain or approving of the loss. It means a willingness to allow those difficult thoughts, feelings, physical sensations to be there without that constant struggle to push them away or getting totally swept up by them.
Making space for the pain rather than fighting it.
Exactly, which, as we said, runs counter to that avoidance instinct, doesn't it?
Totally.
So ACT also really emphasizes mindfulness, cultivating that ability to be present right here, right now, observing your thoughts and feelings without judging them, just noticing them come and go.
Like watching clouds drift by.
Kind of, yeah. It creates this psychological space, helps you step back a bit from the overwhelming swirl of rumination. You can observe the pain without drowning in it. That coping with grief and loss meditation section touched on this.
Okay, so acceptance, mindfulness. So what's the third piece of ACT?
Values-driven action. This is crucial.
Yeah.
Even when the pain is still there, because often it will be, in some form, ACT helps you connect with what truly matters most to you deep down. your core values.
Like kindness or connection or creativity.
Whatever they might be for you, yes.
Yeah.
And then it's about taking committed action, steps guided by those values, finding meaning and moving forward with the difficult feelings, not waiting for them to vanish first.
That sounds like it connects back to what Stephen C. Hayes was saying about love and loss.
It really does.
Yeah.
Hayes's perspective is that, pursuing things that deeply matter to you, acting lovingly in the world, even knowing that things are impermanent and you might fail, that's a powerful form of caring. The pain of loss in the ACT framework is like the other side of the coin of value. It hurts so much because you loved, because that connection mattered.
So ACT helps you link the pain to the value.
Yes, and then use that value as a compass to guide you in living a life that honors what was important in that relationship, even after the loss.
I remember reading about a tool related to this, the grief tricks.
Ah, yes, the grief tricks. It's a really interesting application, a variation of a standard ACT exercise. It helps people explore the positive qualities and values they saw in the person they lost. And then the process guides the grieving person to consciously choose to embody those same qualities and values in their own life moving forward. It's a way of shifting the perspective. Death isn't just an ending, it's a change in the form of the relationship. The essence, the values of the loved one can continue through your actions.
That feels like a very active and meaningful way to carry the connection forward. It's not just about letting go, but transforming the bond.
Precisely. Beyond these kinds of formal therapies, what about other practices people turn to?
Well, we saw meditation mentioned again, not as a magic fix, but as maybe a daily ritual, a way to process things, find moments of calm.
Makes sense. And the Guardian article mentioned things like grief apps, too, resources readily available.
And even laughter yoga.
Yeah.
Which sounds maybe a bit unusual.
It does, but it points to the creativity people use, right? Finding alternative ways to release tension, shift perspective, even for a moment, inducing deliberate laughter as a kind of therapy.
And journaling kept popping up.
Yeah, it seems to be a really consistent tool across different approaches. That process of getting thoughts and feelings out on paper helps with processing, understanding, even just remembering. The Daily Stoic and the Spiritual and Psychological Guide both noted its value.
One thread that seemed woven through almost everything we looked at was, don't go it alone.
Oh, absolutely critical. Seeking support is vital, whether it's turning to friends, family, joining a dedicated grief support group, or seeing a therapist.
It can be hard, though. Sometimes people don't know what to say.
True, and the materials acknowledge that. Others might feel awkward, unsure, but their care, their presence, just being there, that often matters more than finding the perfect words. The core message is, you don't have to carry this enormous weight by yourself.
And for therapy specifically, that relationship with the therapist is key, isn't it? The Bay Area CBT Center material called it the therapeutic alliance.
Yes, feeling understood, feeling like you're working together towards shared goals with your therapist. That strong bond is a huge predictor of success in therapy for almost any issue, including grief.
And sometimes it takes a team effort.
Especially with more complex or prolonged grief, yes. As the Stat Pearls material mentioned, grief management often benefits from involving different professionals, like mental health experts working together.
Okay, let's zoom out even further. How do things like faith and culture shape how people experience grief and find ways through it?
The diversity here is just immense. As we saw across several articles, different religions, different cultures have incredibly varied mourning practices and beliefs.
But are there common themes that emerge?
Definitely. You often see the importance of rituals, structured ways to mark the loss and process the transition. Strong community support is another big one. Connection to ancestors, or the divine, or a larger spiritual reality. And ultimately, many practices help people reaffirm life, even in the shadow of death.
Can you give us a few examples?
Sure. Buddhist practices often involve ceremonies spaced out over time, like the 3rd, 7th, 49th, 100th days after death. These are seen as guiding the consciousness of the deceased and also helping the family navigate the stages of intense grief. Sometimes there's even a stop cry ceremony, signaling a shift.
A formal end to the most intense period.
And there's that powerful story of Ubiri weeping for her daughter, and the Buddha Veda asking her, essentially, which of the countless beings who have died throughout time she was weeping for. It's meant to offer perspective on the universality of loss.
Wow. What about, say, Muslim traditions?
There's often an emphasis on quick burial and collective community prayer, which symbolizes acceptance of God's will. But importantly, the Prophet Muhammad himself showed tears and sadness, indicating that grief is natural.
So acceptance, but not suppression.
Right. And there's an emphasis on patience. on reframing thoughts towards accepting what is, focusing on the hope of paradise, and finding meaning through ongoing acts of charity in the loved one's name, anticipatory, or continuing their positive legacy. The spiritual and psychological guide detailed some of these coping strategies.
And Jewish traditions. I know about Shiva.
Yes, Shiva is the intense 7-day mourning period where the community surrounds the bereaved, bringing food, offering comfort, just being present. It's very focused support. This is then followed by gradually less intense periods of mourning over the next year, providing a structured path back into daily life while still honoring the loss. And you see variations everywhere. Christian practices like wakes, funeral masses, yearly remembrances, Hindu traditions involving quick cremation and specific mourning periods before memorials.
What about the Baha'i perspective mentioned?
It seemed to emphasize processing grief through prayer, meditation, and particularly through service to others, also reflecting on the spiritual growth that can potentially come from navigating sorrow.
It really seems like faith and spirituality can offer a deep well of comfort and meaning for many.
Absolutely. There's that comparative study we saw. It suggested that both spiritual therapy and group grief counseling help reduce feelings like guilt and shame. And spiritual therapies seem potentially even more effective specifically for guilt. So drawing comfort from faith, engaging in spiritual activities, it can provide real solace, a framework for understanding, and help people grapple with how the loss impacts their fundamental beliefs and values.
Okay, so we've really covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at that raw, overwhelming initial experience of grief, dug into why it's so challenging to just move on, and journeyed through all these different ways people navigate it. Ancient philosophy, modern therapies like ACT and tailored CBT, simple practices, and the huge role of culture and faith.
And I think what really stands out is just how deeply personal grief is. There really isn't one map, one right way. It's more like we've looked at a whole collection of compasses, maybe.
Focuses, I like that.
Yeah. And the task for each person is to explore these different tools and perspectives, whether it's the Stoic focus on acceptance, or ACT's approach of making space for pain while acting on values, or the community support found in cultural rituals, or the deep comfort of faith. It's about finding what resonates, what feels true and helpful for you on your own unique path.
So it sounds like the goal isn't necessarily to eliminate the pain entirely, because maybe you can't, or maybe that wouldn't even be right, given the love.
Exactly. Perhaps the aim is more about learning to carry the grief, to process it, integrate it, and crucially, to connect it to what still matters, to the enduring values, the love, the meaning that the relationship represented, and that still exists within you.
Acknowledging the pain as, like you said, a testament to the love, and then figuring out how to honor that love by how you live your life now.
Yes. Integrating the loss, weaving it into the fabric of who you are, rather than trying to cut it out or build a wall around it.
Okay. So thinking about everything we've explored, the sheer rawness of grief, why it sticks with us, all these diverse paths people take, here's a final thought for you listening. How might embracing that natural, unavoidable pain of loss, really letting it connect you to the enduring value of love and the things that truly, deeply matter to you? How might that become a powerful path, not just through grief, but actually towards living a richer, more meaningful life?